I'm getting ready to make a loaf of bread, so I thought what a great time to hop on and just go over all things, you know, the basics of the sourdough. So I'm still a student myself. I only started making sourdough about 2 months ago, and I received my sourdough starter from Deb. And so now, meet Martha. You have to name your sourdough starter. It's mandatory. So I've got yours all started for you, and I'm about to feed her for the second time. So by the time you receive her this week, she's going to be ready to roll. And I'm going to go over feedings, how to make things, discarding your sourdough, and just picking a routine for yourself. Now, I'm home every day, so I'm basically making a loaf every day. And if I'm not, I'm sharing it. It's one of the best parts is making it and sharing it with someone if you're not interested in eating it yourself that day. So I love giving it a loaf here and there to my neighbors. So it's really exciting. I caught on really quick, and it's really not that hard. So just don't overthink it. Getting into like the sourdough starter, I just kind of think of this the same, like I bake all the time. So if I'm going to make a pizza dough or something, I'm going to grab a packet of dry active yeast. So this is essentially what this is. The difference is that this is like a living organism. So it's like we're keeping this girl alive all the time. So that's in the sense of if you're wanting to make a loaf a day. If you're somebody that just wants to play around with sourdough, maybe you just want to make a loaf on the weekends, you can put her in the fridge and you're just going to feed her you know, before you are ready to use her. So feeding her, it means you're giving her it's just flour and water mixture. And then it's about every 12 hours I'm using this. So I fed her last night at about 7:30 and it's doubled in size. So she's ready to use. And it's mind blowing because when you see what's going to happen here, I'm going to make a loaf of bread and use 100 grams of this starter every morning. So, and it's basically everything in this jar except for like some little bit of scrap that we're going to leave on the bottom. And then that's what you're going to feed every day. So again, yours is all ready to go. I'm going to walk you through all the steps, and we're going to learn as we go. I have messed up a couple loaves in the beginning, and then I kind of seen exactly where I was making my mistakes. And everybody finds their own process. I've already modified mine from the way Deb does hers. Our houses are different. Sometimes she'll leave her bread out on the counter all evening because her house is a little cooler in the nights, where I find I still need to put mine in the fridge. So we're gonna go through all of that. I hope it all makes sense and I'm not talking too fast. All right, so that's 100 grams of the starter. I want you to see, this is what kind of stressed me out at first, is that you're only leaving like, I don't know, 10% of that sourdough starter in the jar. So it's pretty minimal. There's not a whole lot left. You're gonna scrape down the sides in a few minutes and you're gonna feed this again and get it ready for your next loaf. So now we're gonna feed Martha. We're gonna again put your jar back on the scale, have it at 0 grams, and we are going to add 50 grams of filtered water. So close. So we got 50 grams of water. Now I'm just going to add 50 grams of the feeder. There we are, bang on. So now I'm going to use my favorite spatula again, and we're just going to scrape the sides of this and give it a really good mix. And then we're going to put the lid on, and that's it. Right, so she's all ready to go. Jar's a little bit messy. I always put an elastic band on mine so that you can judge how much she's grown. And now I'm just gonna put the lid on, and I just kind of set her off into a warm spot. I should have done this video earlier, but let's talk about discard. So I've just fed these two this morning. I always have the elastic band so that you can see later it'll double in size, and that's when it'll be ready to work with. So you're gonna take the 100 grams out, you're gonna be left with that last little bit in your jar. You're gonna put your 50 grams of water, your 50 grams of flour, and voila. So this morning I did use my 100 grams to make a loaf over here. But on nights, like usually in the evenings, in the mornings, I find I always use my discard. I always make a fresh loaf in the morning for that next day, or however you're gonna figure that out. For times when I'm not using it because I am feeding it twice a day, I either just, if I'm not in the mood for making anything, I literally weigh out that 100 grams and then I put it in the grain bin. I don't overthink it. It is what it is. And sometimes I do save it. So in the fridge, this looks kind of like disturbing if you're new to this. So this is like This is called like a hooch. So this has been sitting in there. I have another one that's fresh, but this one's been sitting there for a few minutes. Well, all I have to do is like mix this back up. It stays for like ever. So it's the same kind of thing. If you decide that you're only gonna use your starter on the weekends, you're gonna leave her in the fridge all week. Say Friday night, you're gonna feed her. Saturday morning, you're gonna be ready to bake with her. So that's kind of the same, that's the process of that for like, if you're just using it once a week, you're gonna feed her when you're ready to use her. So that's the same idea of like everything. If I don't wanna waste that discard on that second feed when I'm not using it, I just throw it into a separate jar or I throw it in the green bin. When I save it in the separate jar, it can start to look like this if you don't use this. But there's tons of recipes for inactive discard or if you get what I'm saying. So if tomorrow I wanted to make like a couple of loaves of bread, I could take from this, do just what I did with this. I could take like 20 grams of this and then, or 10 grams of this and do the 50-50 feed and reactivate some. I'd probably feed it a couple times before I baked with it, but I could essentially take that little bit of starter from this, like we would if we like were starting in the bottom of this jar, and refeed it, reactivate it and use it. But for the most part, I just always maintain my 100 grams. I'm using about 100 grams a day. But like I say, if you're saving this, you can make pizza doughs, you can make bagels, you can make, there's like so many recipes for discard recipes, which is essentially just using your sourdough starter for other recipes, right? So the basic recipe is what we just made, is that loaf of bread. I hope that makes sense. It's funny because I thought, at first it seemed like a lot, but once you do this a couple times, once you get up a couple mornings in a row and you set the right tone for it, like I like to have feed mine around 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. because if I go any later, I get in bed at night and I'm like, shit, I didn't do it, which isn't a huge deal. I just generally, if I don't feed her within that 12 hours, that next one I really will just throw that discard out. So just don't overthink it. It's really just simple steps of feeding her, then using it, and then refeeding it. So it's just like that repeat.